Hey, in today's video, I'm talking about how justified anger impacts our recovery. And I'm going to share some personal story from this week that I had a pretty big epiphany about, and I think it's going to help. But first, if you're new, my name is Michelle Ferris. I'm a psychotherapist, and I love helping people create relationships that work. And I'm also a therapist in recovery, so I work on this every day. And this week, I had an aha moment where I found myself getting into some justified anger. And I had to look it up, and it basically means that it's a moral outrage for injustices. In recovery, that really means injustices about our childhood and what happened to us that is probably unfinished in adulthood. So what happened was I had hired a designer to help me with my house, and I was super excited. And then the night before, she had texted me and made a request. And it was a simple request, but for some reason, it really bugged me. And I told my husband about it, and I was kind of hemming and hawing a bit. And I could tell I was getting angry. I was getting that justifiable anger. Like, look at me, I have a right to be upset. Have you ever felt that way? I know I'm not alone here. And what I noticed in the moment was I caught it and I realized, oh my God, I am literally blowing up this small, minor detail in my life so that I can get justified anger. And I think there's a reason we do that, because if you grew up in a dysfunctional family like I did, your feelings and your experiences were not validated. And it's not because our parents were bad or wrong, it's because they simply didn't see the importance of it, and they didn't know how to do it for us, and they definitely probably didn't know how to validate themselves, because we can't teach what we don't have. So what happens in childhood is that we end up not really trusting ourselves. And that's what I talked about in last week's video when I talked about the difference between internal and external validation. But in adulthood, what happens is when we get hurt in the moment, we may react a little bit more intensely than we are really meaning to. And that's because we didn't have our experiences validated as kids. So when I noticed I was getting angry over some petty thing, I realized it has nothing to do with what that other person was doing in the moment. It was really my own need to get my old hurt validated. Like, look at me, somebody's doing me wrong. And I wanted my husband to join in on that with me and to say, yeah, you're right, you were hurt, that does suck. And while we all need that validation, and I did too, I realized I was wasting a lot of energy because, let's face it, there's a lot more important things to get upset about. But in recovery, especially early recovery, whether it's from substance abuse or codependency, there's a lot of feelings that need to come up in our recovery. And there's a lot of upset. But what happens in our recovery is that we can tend to go to that justified anger to be right and to get that validation that our experiences were in fact true. And that's what I was doing. The problem with that is that it was a total waste of my energy. And I was literally at that moment realizing I do this with other stuff too. So when I get minor hurts from people, I don't blow them up to the extreme anymore. I don't do that. But I hold on to them a little bit longer than I should. And that's because of that justified anger. So what I want to invite you to do is ask yourself, do you have any justified anger? And again, it's not right, wrong. I think this is all a part of recovery, because if we didn't get our experiences validated as kids, we are not going to have a lot of tolerance for being invalidated as adults. This is why a lot of people take my Calming Your Anger class, which is coming up. I'll put it in the description if you're interested. Because when you don't have those feelings, whether it's anger, whether it's hurt, whether it's disappointment, when you don't get your feelings validated as a kid, you learn to stuff them and you learn that they're not okay and they leak out in really unhealthy ways. And for me, I noticed my justified anger leaked out in me just feeling anxious and me getting upset when there really was no need. I could let go of it and use my program and say, how important is it? She has a request. I don't necessarily like it, but is it really gonna make that much difference to me? No, it didn't. But in the moment, if we're chasing that empathy and we're chasing that I need my experience validated in the moment, which again is gonna be part of recovery, that can derail us a bit. And it can make that justified anger last longer than it needs to. So for me, it was a real aha moment this week. I'm going to be paying a lot closer attention when I get upset. And is it something that I can let go of in the moment and say, how important is it? Or is it something I really need to deal with and spend some time on? Because there is a difference. And justified anger for me in this situation was really me blowing something out of proportion. And I know it directly related to how I grew up. So if this resonates with you, I definitely want to hear your experience, because justified anger, it's a way that we can get validation in adulthood, because we want somebody else basically to notice that we're being hurt. We need that empathy. We need that validation. The problem is when justified anger begins to play a bigger role in our life and our recovery, it can really hurt us in the long run. And I realized for me, I've been in recovery long enough that I don't really want to be wasting my energy being upset at the little things. But what I really want to encourage you guys to do is to look at if you have any justified anger, and is it serving you, or is it something that is hurting you? Because if it is, I really invite you to take a look at it. Now, if you haven't already watched my video last week on seeking validation from outside of yourself, go watch that, because that's going to really explain more how you can start to validate yourself. I would love it if you hit subscribe and become a part of my community. Thanks so much.